Well, welcome, Pancho.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know, this is Pancho Jimenez. I'm really grateful that you're able to join us and really happy to be working with you. I'm trying to think, and you'll remember, I hope, better than I do. You came on my radar after you did a show in Oakland at Roscoe Gallery, that is no longer open these days, but I had seen your work. Would that have been, I don't even know,
Five,
3 years ago?
six,
5, 6. Oh my God. Okay, that's how
well,
time
maybe
flies.
five. I don't know.
Okay, holy cow. Yeah,
You know how it is when the older you get.
I guess
Yeah.
it does that. But yeah,
Well,
it was funny.
nowadays
We were,
everything blurs. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
yes, it's okay. It does. Yeah, this last couple of years or year feels that way too. But yeah, I think it came up in an email again that yeah, Derek gave me your contact info, and it was so long and the short. I'm grateful that we're able to work together, and it's really good to get you on here. Um, I'm sure a lot of our audience doesn't know about you yet. They might be familiar with your work, but I think a great starting place would be learning about kind of your roots, your origins, and kind of how you came into clay and how you got to where you are today. So um, I'll just kind of
Yeah.
let you jump in there.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to thank you, Brett, for giving me the opportunity and taking me on. It's exciting. The silver lining to COVID, right? We get to do these talks
Yeah,
and virtual shows. So I'm excited to do it. So thanks again.
yeah, my
Um,
pleasure.
so how I got into clay, kind of the classic, took a class at a community center when I was a kid, and just kind of fell in love. Made, little boxes. I actually still have my first piece. And that's probably the only one. But after that, kind of, fell out of it. You're a kid, right? You do whatever you do. And then late junior high, early high school, my dad had a friend who actually ended up becoming a mentor of mine, Kelly Detweiler, and he was teaching a ceramics class at Santa Clara University. And he asked if I could join the class. You're at that age where you're old enough to get into trouble, but too young to get a job. So I think my dad was thinking, let's get this kid busy. But it was great. I joined the class. I would stay late and just make stuff. It was fantastic. I loved it. I after all the college kids would leave, I'd play my own music. As an eighth grader or freshman in high school, that's exciting stuff. Um, then I art here and there in high school, and then I got to college. Took another ceramics class. Realized the love was still there. Stuck with it. Majored in art, but was a little worried about the prospects of an art career. So I double majored in history, specifically Latin American history, and it turned out to be pretty fortuitous because it informed my work later on down the line. Most of I took all the prereq courses that we had to do in college, and then I took mostly ceramics courses and had a great mentor there as well. Kelly Detweiler was there as well, but so was Ed Blackburn. So he was really good to me there and really encouraging. So I love that. A couple of years after that, went on to grad school. I wanted to keep doing it. Had a few jobs. I went on to grad school at San Francisco State. With great program there. In fact, many of the people who came just after me, just before me, and while I was there, are teaching in the Bay Area. So we have a nice little community, the Greater Bay Area.
Hmm.
So it's wonderful. I think most people feel this way. Clay found me, and it won't let me go. Sometimes I'd really like to let it go, but I love working with my hands. I love the possibilities. I joke sometimes with my students that what I really love is I don't have to measure anything because you can always I
Yeah,
get in. Go
I
ahead.
knew early on I could never be like a woodworker for that reason. Clay, we can like just push it a little, squish it a little more
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
exactly. I watch woodworkers and I'm like, look at that angle. I don't think I could get that percent. Anyways,
No.
so yeah, that it's just kind of been one foot in front of the other ever since.
Hmm.
Um, and then just kept working at it and working at it, and got a job after graduate school working for Mission Clay Products with Brian Van Sal. And so he and I worked together for about 3 years trying to do an Mission Clay Products produced a product called a clay flue liner. It's the flue liner above your firebox. They don't sell them in California because of earthquakes, but so he wanted to do an offline product. And so we came up with this idea of these planters, and these things are great. They don't warp, they don't shrink. Unfortunately, they're heavy and hard to ship, and we couldn't compete with all the other manufacturers around the world and here in the States. But it was an excellent experience, and I cherish the friendship with Brian. I think it was really wonderful. Yeah, so that's kind of been my life. And then now I managed to secure a job teaching at Santa Clara. So teaching at Santa Clara University with Kelly Detweiler, who was my. And so it's pretty cool to work with the person that brought you there, so to speak. Taught me my art, and mentored me. So I've been teaching there about. It hurts me to say it, 19 years. So quite a while, and I love it. They tell you there's nothing more fun than teaching. I think when you work with clay, one of the things that's exciting is the possibilities, right? I mean, you got a 25-pound bag of heavy beige material, and what comes of it is really between your head and your hands. And to watch students dive into that conversation and to see what they come up with, it's exciting. I have to say, every time we're doing glazing and it's glaze time, I mean, it's like Christmas for me to going in and seeing what everybody's doing. So anyway, I've been teaching and making my own work, and then that's kind of been my career, having a family, that kind of thing. But for career-wise, teaching and making work been pretty wonderful. Yeah.
I can't help but notice, and obviously in your work as well, but where you're sitting, all the molds. So I'm a fellow mold maker, and that's was a segue into ceramics. I mean, I wanted to be professional at it, but a segue into my profession was molds. How did that introduction happen for you or into your work?
Yeah. Bear with me for a second. It's a little story, but
that's okay.
So went in graduate school, and for the first, I'd say 15 years, maybe, everything I did was carved. I'd make these forms and then I'd carve them. And the vocabulary I'd use was really geometry, so geometric carving. And what inspired that carving was kind of the hieroglyphs you see in Latin America and Mexico. And that's a lot of what I learned in undergrad when I studied Latin American history. So carving. In fact, I did they weren't called residencies then, but I essentially did a residency with Mission Clay for 2 summers. And those flue liners are pretty rigid, but I carved those. And anyways, over time, I've ended up damaging my elbow. And it got so bad
from the carving. Yeah. That it was just that kind of work.
I had tennis elbow without playing any tennis. And it got bad enough to where it woke me up at night. I couldn't lift a simple half gallon of milk. And so after trying a lot of different things, I finally opted for surgery. And so you have surgery, and I don't know if you ever had surgery, but you go to bed they knock you out in one room and you wake up in another. It's the only surgery I've ever had. But so I'm coming out of the haze that is, the anesthetic, and the doctor comes in and starts telling me proudly how well he did. And then he pauses and he looks at me, he says, "So just don't do what you've been doing and you'll be fine." I thought, hey man, what I've been doing is what I do. And so I had to reevaluate. I had to figure out, well, okay, what am I going to do? The obvious answer was, I use my left hand. But then I thought, okay, but in 10 years, I'll be in the same position with my other hand. So I didn't want 2 bad elbows. Mm-hmm. So I had to basically reevaluate and ask myself, what do I want to make? Why do I want to make it? And why do I want to do it in clay? So the first question is, why clay? Why not wood? Why not some other material? And the, the honest answer is it's just authentic to me. It's the material that generates the ideas. It's the material that I respond to. Um, I don't have any kind of logical explanation for it other than it feels right, and it's a nice fit, and that's what
Mhm.
gets me where I want to go. So then, okay, so what am I going to do? What am I going to make that is, unique to ceramics? And I thought, so I was thinking about, I like these dense surfaces. I like the idea of history that these dense surfaces project. And I thought, well, what else can I put on there? And I thought, well, maybe I'll just swap out my vocabulary. And so I swapped the carving vocabulary for molds and for the images that you see in molds.
Yeah.
So I had about a 6-month recovery. So I spent my 6 months on eBay and Craigslist and dragged my kids around to people's houses, kind of all over the Bay Area. And I was just, people were giving molds away, basically years ago when we were kids. I think somebody could supplement their income making little tchotchkes or Christmas trees or what have ornaments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but people's grandmothers were dying off or they didn't want to do it anymore, so I was just became this collector. And I honestly, at first, I didn't know what I was looking for. I knew I wanted the molds, I knew they were specific to ceramics, but I wasn't sure what I'd get. And I would just spend time in garages that looked very much like this,
Yeah.
or warehouses or whatever, just looking for molds and grabbing what grabbed me. And what really became obvious to me is as I looked at this imagery, it was a lot about that history again, a lot about memory and a lot about experience, a lot about kind of dreams. Um, and so when it was time for me to work again, I kind of picked up where I left off. I started making these simple forms, but instead of carving the surface, I would put the molds on. And but it wasn't so much I wanted to create kind of this, just kind of pour them and slip and then put them on. I was really more interested in how they could blend into one another, how they could move from one object to the next. Um, when I was a kid, I traveled in Mexico City and then, of course, studied Latin American history. And I always loved the muralists in Mexico. And what particularly fascinated me with the muralists is you could move from one image to another and suddenly, jump 100 years and without, they, and
Hmm.
so, I kind of wanted to capture a little bit of that by blending these molds into one another. And so they really just became about kind of memory, history, experience, and dreams. Because when we recall our memory, we recall our dreams, we recall our experiences, they're not linear. They're not clear. They tend to come in and out of focus. One jumps to the other, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of the way that went. And so when you're looking at the work that the gallery has, the images like pieces, I should say, pieces like Passage, Ball of Faces, Harmony, Marker, and Crossing, they all kind of fall into that same kind of
Hmm.
interest and series. Um, there's two other pieces in the works that I sent over that kind of grew from what I've been talking about. And so, in my mind, these are about memory and experiences and dreams. And I began to think, well, whose memories, experiences, and dreams am I talking about, right?
Hmm.
Maybe mine, maybe just imagine. So I thought, well, I'm going to get a little more specific about who I'm talking about or whose dreams and memories and experiences I'm talking about. And so I began to think about, or I began to develop what I call imagined biographies. So in the piece called, for example, Hipster. So Hipster is part of a series of pieces where I created these busts and then created hairdos, right? Because the way we identify ourselves is the way we wear, what we wear, and then certainly the way we wear our hair. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, what if you could see somebody's biography in their hair, not just the way they wear it, but the imagery, right? What if imagery came through the hair? And so that's what happens in specifically in hipster, but it's part of a whole series of pieces called that I titled Biography. And then there's a second piece in there that is called Headdress. And again, thinking about biography, I thought, well, okay, you know, maybe we wear our hair a certain way, and our biography could be revealed through the way we wear our hair. But what if it was something we wore kind of proudly, like a headdress, you know? And so I created these series of pieces and these headdresses, and then put the molds on in more of a symmetrical fashion. So less about kind of the blending of biography and more about kind of the presentation of biography.
Yeah.
You know, I glaze those kind of a green color, so they have kind of a more of an ancient or old feel, or at least they feel not of this time. And then with the headdress or the hipster one, I did, you know, kind of an off-white, you know, a nod to the kind of classical sculpture.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's an exciting thing. And what's really wonderful is, you know, I'm not, you know, I've courts use molds that I've kind of gathered, and I keep gathering them. It's wonderful because some of the molds are like from 1965, because Duncan stamped the year on them, and they run out, they kind of stop around the mid 90s, early 90s. So there's like, you know, you almost see some pop culture in there. I got you know, there's E.T., and then there's Gremlins, and then there's, I didn't even know this, there's some storybook characters of books that I guess were very popular in the early 60s. One of my mother's friends pointed that out to me. So yeah, so that's the work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for that's really comprehensive. I think that's great. And I think maybe this is question/statement, but you know, looking through like Marker, Harmony, pieces like that series, you've consistently, and I think this kind of draws attention, that dreamlike, but you pick a glaze, and that's for the, you know, each piece is kind of monochromatic in that way. I really enjoyed that when I first kind of discovered that body of work of yours, because I do feel like it, there's a uniformity to all the images, and kind of, to use your words, kind of bouncing from one to the other, or the same way you move in and out of a dream, or from one symbol to the next. I feel like that really allows for that.
Thank you.
Visually, and I think that's what kind of drew me to those pieces, is there's not a weight put on one image or the other. They all, there's a pattern, and then you start to discover within the pattern, so to speak.
Yeah. There's a bit of discovery in these works, certainly.
Yeah. I always appreciate that about when you approach work.
It's
obviously these aren't in a three-dimensional space right now in our gallery, but that's something I love from a curation standpoint. And when you first walk in and you see, you know, some of these sort of monolithic shapes that you've created from afar, you know, a symbol almost, but then as you move towards it, you go, oh my gosh, there's all this other story there. There's other layers that peel back.
Yeah. That's the fun for me too. You know, you put some surprises in there that maybe you only know exist.
Yeah.
You got to have fun with it a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, this has been great. Again, for those of you tuning in, Pancho's work is going to be online. He's one of our online feature artists. I hope to, when things kind of normalize again, get your work up here physically as well. And you know, one of our goals with these chats and relationship building here is to kind of check back in, you know. So I'm kind of just now coming into about a year of doing these, but but kind of following up with what you're working on and what you're interested in, and just kind of seeing where that goes, and seeing how we can intersect and continue to work together. So
I'm excited about it. I got a couple new series I'm working on. Now I'm imagining, you know, our biographies, sometimes we hide within us, you know what I'm saying? And so I've created these forms that kind of explode, or they crack open, and then the biography reveals itself. So I'm enjoying that. And then I've also discovered letters and numbers. So you know, Yeah, I did a piece recently for a show at the Marin Museum of Art. It was a show on racial justice,
Hmm.
and I did an 8 and a small 46, or yeah, 846,
Okay.
and I put there. I have a mold of an individual kind of gasping for air, and so it was kind of a to memorialize the amount of time George Floyd had a knee on his neck. That
Yeah.
8 minutes and
Oh,
46 seconds. So, yeah, the possibilities for this kind of endless, and that's exciting.
yeah. No, that's a great place to find yourself. And of course, I think that's what we all hope to be doing as artists, is the journey continues, and that the discovery as an artist, you keep searching and
Yeah,
finding new things to keep you engaged. So that's super exciting to hear.
absolutely.
Um, well, Pancho, thank you so much for your time today. This is awesome. Again, for those tuning in, check out online and follow along on social media, and we'll be sharing more work. And um, again, thank you so much. And I look forward to hopefully maybe Sacramento, we'll get to see each other in person.
Yeah, I look forward
Yeah,
to it. Thank you, Brett. It was
yeah,
great,
my pleasure.
great talking to you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day. Bye.
You too. Bye.